Imagine you lived in the 1830s when the Sydney Mechanics School of Arts was established. Yes, it's the oldest school of arts in Australia and also the oldest continuous lending library. That's quite an achievement. I first came across the SMSA when I was exploring Sydney. I was in my 20s and it would have been the 1960s. I had an inquiring mind, and the Sydney I remember from around the 1960s was a glorious place. Lots of colonial buildings. Sadly, most of them have come tumbling down, but Pitt Street was a hive of them. And of course, the old SMSA building, which had been built in the 19th century, was quite a statement. I remember going in there for lectures, people giving talks, and I was a regular at the Sydney Domain, and it seemed a natural step to step inside of the School of Arts building because they held similar ideas about exploring your mind, opening your mind to new ideas, not always accurate ones. I think the Flat Earth Society actually had its meetings for a while in one of the School of Arts meeting rooms. What I do remember is the building was fairly imposing, and out the front was one of those round embossed metal I just said Sydney School of Arts. I didn't have the word mechanics in it, which, as you probably know, the mechanics side of it was really a reference to brain fodder and things, people exploring. What I do need to say is that during the time of the great changeover of population from the 19th century to the 20th century, and you could probably use the Federation of Australia in 1901 as the midpoint, but there was this shift of the population in Australia to the coasts and to the cities, and people were thirsty for information, and places like the Domain and the School of Arts was important to people to broaden their minds. The old building had, I remember, sort of an echoey sound to it when you walked in because it was quite expansive in as far as it had very high ceilings with these domed lights. I remember it being quite light, although that's probably not true, but I remember that there was these light wells on the roof, on the ceiling of the reading room, and lots of books, and the smell of old books, because old books do have an odour. It wasn't unpleasant. It was a nostalgic odour of all those people that had read those books for years and years and years. And of course, books were one of the most important, and continue to be one of the most important aspects of the School of Arts. You know, the old shearers of the 19th century and the stockmen used to pride themselves that they could read and write, not always perfectly, but they certainly took a great pride in the fact that they were readers. The Bushman's Bible, that's what they called the old bulletin magazine, which was really important to the story of reading in Australia, used to have a policy of allowing people to write 300 words maximum and send it in, and maybe they'd get published. So maybe that was an incentive. But they loved to get books, and you couldn't go to a bookshop if you lived in the bush, of course. You'd wait till you came to the city and go to one of the big bookshops, or you went to a lending library, especially the School of Arts. And that's how you really educated yourself. And we also know around the time of the gold rush, probably the 1860s, the latter part of the gold rush, The education system broadened in Australia, and there are a lot more free schools, and that's, one of the differences of Australia to America and some of frontier Canada is that we became very literate in Australia. We did appreciate the spoken word and the written word, and we know how enthusiastically all those bushies that came to the city endorsed people like Henry Lawson, Henry Kendall, and of course Banjo Patterson, just to name a handful of people that became, the people who wrote about our national identity. A really important fact in the story of Australia. So the School of Arts really has played an admirable role in the education of Australians, Sydney-siders, New South Waleshmen and women, and also played a role in allowing us to expand our mind through talks, debates, and, just the things that we really need to separate us from the brain dead of those who watch television all the time. So long may the Mechanics School of Arts thrive. It's a very important aspect of our literary history.